You are now listening to The Unwavering, the movement dedicated to educating and empowering the brave men and women who have or are still serving our great nation. What's up, everyone? This is Kevin with another episode of The Unwavering. Today we've got a real special guest, my good friend Tim, and we've got a pretty exciting topic that I think is really going to be beneficial for a lot of you. But before we begin, as always, a huge thank you to the military community, all the active duty service members, the reservists, the veterans, and their family members as well. This show wouldn't be important to us if it wasn't for people like you guys. So thank you for everything that you do, for everything that you sacrifice for us. We hope that this helps you and your family reach your fullest potential. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to my friend Tim and let him introduce himself.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Tim Silu.
Hey, Tim, thanks so much for taking the time to join me, man. I really appreciate it. Super excited for today's episode. I know you and I have had this conversation a million times in the past, but for a lot of the people that are out there listening, I think they struggle or may struggle, especially when they're transitioning out of the military, because we're joining a new workforce, we're adapting to a new culture, and I think that there's certain things that make certain individuals come off a little bit more genuine and charismatic, and there's a lot of errors that we make that are negative in the eyes of employers. So I really just wanted to dive into that today and talk about the lessons and secrets that you have found that have made you successful, and likewise the things that I was taught that allowed me to be a little bit more open and comfortable in the workplace. So the 4 reasons that I think we don't reach our full potential is going to come down to mindset, direction, hard work, and being genuine. And I'll kind of break those down and kind of get your take. But starting off with the first one, mindset, I think this is the number one factor that a lot of us have to deal with. Coming out of the military, oftentimes our mindset is, okay, we're getting out of the military, maybe we don't have a degree, maybe we don't have certain certifications, so a lot of people are defeated before they even join the civilian workforce. And when I say that, an example I'll give you is, I don't know how many times I've heard from different people of all different ages and all different ranks, when you ask them, hey, what are you going to do? And their first answer is, oh, I don't know, I'm going to be a cop. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I just personally don't think that everyone truly wants to be a cop. I think other people's ambitions might be a little bit different, and it's disappointing to see them sell themselves short or to see other people tell them that that's all they can ever achieve. So I think our mindset is really important when you go into starting something new, whether you're starting a new job, whether you're exiting the military, or you're coming out of college for the first time. Just having that mindset that you are capable of achieving more is super important. So I kind of want to get your take on that. When you were coming into the civilian workforce, what was your mindset? Is that something that you think, whether it was culturally or maybe a generation thing, did anyone ever doubt your abilities, and did that kind of affect how you went into viewing yourself and your own capabilities?
For me, I've never been in the military, but the common denominator is mindset. Law enforcement has the same structure, or it can be tied into stereotypes, different denominations or color of your skin. For me, I'm Polynesian, right? I'm Samoan. And a lot of them is like, oh, stereotype. Those guys are big. So they're either going to be like either a security, bouncer, or a warehouse. But it's really the mindset you decide to do and break those boundaries.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, you coming from a law enforcement background. I wasn't law enforcement, but I know that there's a lot of common things that we go through, the structure and the mindset, and that's true. I think you guys, along with a lot of other first responders, say you decide to leave the police force or being a firefighter, you're so used to a certain way of life that maybe you get stuck in that mindset, or maybe those around you tell you, hey, you know what, this is all you'll ever be. So my point in saying this is I just want people to understand that they're in control of their mindset. The first thing that I think I learned in regards to mindset is when you go into something, it's all about opportunity and timing. And if you're not doing everything you can in the beginning to set yourself up for success, it's going to affect your mindset because you're coming into a new career field and you're like, okay, I don't have these certifications. I don't have this degree. So everything that you come into a job that you don't have is something that's going to work against you. Maybe not even physically, like on paper, but maybe mentally. And that can be crippling more so than the actual paper aspect. Some people don't need a college degree and they're going to be perfectly fine. But other people may need it because it affects their mindset. It affects their level of confidence. Also, on the topic of mindset, we are all a product of our environment. And the reason I bring that up is because your mindset is greatly impacted by those you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with people who also think that they're not capable of achieving something, it's going to affect you. Whether you believe it or not, it's going to affect you. I always like to surround myself with people who are much smarter than me, much more driven, much more ambitious, because I feed off of it. I learn from them, and there's certain things that I can take away and be like, you know what? That's why they're successful, because they grind harder than anyone else around. And I like that. So that's kind of my tip for those of you guys that are listening. I know it gets said all the time, but that cannot be more true. The people that you surround yourself with, it's going to greatly impact your ability to be successful in the workplace. And for those of you guys that are exiting the military, I know it's difficult because you may not have someone to turn to when you're getting out. So who's the first person that you're going to ask for help on what it's like to be a civilian? You're going to ask a fellow military member. You're going to ask whoever your immediate circle is, or even those above you, for help to create your resume. You're going to ask them what the civilian world is like. And in my opinion, it's not really fair for them to answer those questions. I know that they're answering them to help you. And I made the same mistake. You know, I asked people above me like, hey, how do I write my resume? How do I do this thing? But they have no idea. Sure, we look up to them because they're more senior and we expect them to have the answers, but you're asking them to have answers for a world that they've never experienced. So I think that can also be crippling. When you guys think about the mindset, think about who you're surrounding yourself with, who you're asking these questions to, and realize that, sure, they may be able to provide you guidance in one area that is amazing, but they may also be hurting you. So understand their capabilities, where they come from, their mindset, and whether or not they even have experience in the field that you're asking them. Asking a fellow service member what it's like to be a civilian is not going to help you. There's going to be a lot of things that they don't know. Moving on to the next topic of direction, another aspect of why we struggle and don't reach our full potential is we don't know what we're passionate about. And it's going to take a long time. You know, I think for me, I was very fortunate to discover my passion in helping others early. But for some people, you may spend the rest of your lives chasing what you're passionate about. It shouldn't be a deterrent. You shouldn't let it stop you. But even if you don't know what you're passionate about or why you were placed here, just having an idea of, okay, what am I willing to invest my time into? What am I willing to risk dedicating 4 or 5 years? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The one thing that I don't like is seeing people with no sense of direction, so they take the first job offer that's given to them. You guys are capable of a lot more, but if you don't start to see it in yourself, if you don't start to think about what you're passionate about, or again, what you're willing to invest your time in, you're going to have a clouded sense of direction. So again, going back to you, Sulu, what are some things that you kind of ran into when you were growing up? Who kind of mentored you and guided you, and how did you find your sense of direction?
For me, it was multiple people, but mainly one of them was my father. Like I said, for me, I got married young, right? 18. Shoot, I'm going on 12 years. Whew. What? But at first, it was like, okay, I took whatever job was available. My mindset at the time was just like, okay, well, whatever I can get my hands on, right, to get that cash flow coming in and to take care of my responsibility. Because at this time, it's like I married young. Now I have a kid on the way, and now it's real. Reality hit. For me, everything went on quick, and growing up was unique. So my father was in the Army, and he gave us guidelines, and everything was strict. So I just grind. I had to tell myself. And by doing so, I just relied on, just like you said, who you surround yourself with. And so my surrounding was family and some of my friends who became family. So that's what happened to me. And I just kept moving from one job to another. I ended up getting into law enforcement. And that was crazy because I got in law enforcement was just because a buddy of mine, we were in the same situation, married young, have a kid on the way, and we needed consistent jobs, bouncing from different jobs wasn't working out. So we started networking. He sent me an application and said, "Hey, I'm applying for this." So we just went ahead and did it, right? And one thing led to another, and I thought that was it. Cool. I'm in law enforcement. That didn't stop. I still continued. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, I need to better myself. And that's how I got into aerospace. And opportunities came from there. And that was with me networking with different people there. Got into security there as an on-call and had another opportunity and went to become mechanical technician.
See, I love hearing your story because, I mean, obviously I'm biased. We work together. I got a great deal of respect for you. But looking back at your past, you said some things that I think are pretty universal when it comes to my community of the military. I know a lot of friends who ended up joining the military because they're like, oh crap, I've got a kid on the way. I don't want to go to college. So a bunch of different reasons that they joined. And the military did give them structure, just like law enforcement gave you structure. But at the same time, you always had a vision and you always knew that you wanted more. So how is it that you were able to go from just working any job you can get your hands on to then becoming a police officer and getting into law enforcement? Later, you got into the aerospace industry. You got your foot in the door as security. Then you went from security to actually working on flight hardware and different things that you would expect from aerospace.
And like interrupt. The crazy thing is I didn't have no experience.
Exactly.
I didn't have no degree, no experience. It was just my personality. I had to network. But I was glad I was able to network with people, and I think that's where I found my stride in. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah,
yeah,
and there's no experience.
Exactly my point. That's why I was so excited to get you on here and hear your take because, again, going back to the topic of mindset and selling ourselves short or not believing in our potential, there's a lot of things that people can do that they maybe don't need a degree for. You don't have to always have that experience. So for me, when I hear stories like yours and I get the opportunity to talk to you, I want to pick your brain. I want you to share what it is that made you successful so fellow listeners can say, hey, you know what? I was a military police officer or I was in water purification, like something random.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's what you have to do for the rest of your life. If you have drive and ambition, and most importantly, you know how to talk to people, you know how to build genuine relationships, that can get your foot in the door at a lot more places than you believe. And so that's kind of what I want to transition this and talk a little bit more on things that people can do, because knowing you and surrounding myself with you, like anywhere we go out to eat. I mean, Tim is like talking to the waiters. He's talking to everybody. Always has a huge smile on his face. And it's crazy. Like the amount of people that he can connect with from all different walks of life, it's ridiculous. I've never seen any, I'm dead serious, dude. I've never seen anyone that charismatic. And it shows, when we're at work, people respect you. They like being around you and you make the environment better. When we're out, it's the same exact thing. So how can we teach others to be more genuine and charismatic? Because I think that's another thing that we have difficulty with is we spent so much time developing this structure and getting used to that military mindset that maybe certain people don't know how to balance it, right? I love having the military mindset, but I know when to throttle it back or when to bring it up, when it's going to help me in a situation and when it's going to hurt me. And so I think us talking about some of those things, what is it that you think sets you apart from others when it comes to like building relationships?
It's always trying to find a common denominator with whoever you're trying to talk to. If they're in a suit or sweats, whatever, everybody's relatable. And that's how I see it. I think my encouragement is it's never going to be perfect. You just have to try. Put yourself out there. Like you're saying, like we go out and I talk to anybody and anyone, different ages, even if it's a suit, tie, t-shirt, it don't matter. One thing I learned, like being from law enforcement, I kind of lost my identity, to be honest. You kind of lose yourself when you have structure, and sometimes you just can't turn off that switch. But it just took time. And I say, be yourself. A lot of people trying to look for their identity, but then they start using other people's identity. You got to find yours, and don't be afraid to open your mouth and talk to other people. Pick their brain. I'm still picking people's brain. Even you. You know, I still learn from you and everybody else every day. The worst that you can ever do is not open your mouth because it's powerful. Because you can be able to talk and network with other people and get good information. You know, when like a lot of people they apply, but then they never follow through.
Yep.
Sometimes we gotta follow through. Like I'll be like the one instead of just emailing them, I'll be like calling. I'll call the recruiter and be like, "Hey, I haven't heard. I haven't heard in probably like 3 days or 4 days.
Yep.
Hey, I just want to touch up on this application. Is this position still open? You know, you'd be surprised that some of these recruiters they got hundreds of applicants, and you know yours is in the midst of it. So sometimes if you are proactive and just something like that, simply as just calling them, you'd be surprised and be like, "Oh, okay, cool. Hey, I'll pull your application. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm glad you called.
Yep.
Yeah,
I want you to hold that thought because you're getting into some good information.
Okay.
And I know it's going to lead to us sharing some real world examples that can genuinely help people. But before we get on that subject of following up and putting in the work to get the job, I want to come back real quick to the being genuine part. The being genuine, being more relatable, and a little bit more charismatic. I'll be completely honest. I've met people throughout my life, especially in the military, where me and my good friend Zach would always say there's like two types of Marines. There's Marines that like being around other people, and there's Marines that like being by themselves. So the reason why I wanted to bring up these subjects today on this episode is because I want to teach people who maybe are introverted, maybe they don't like talking to people. I want to teach them how to be a little bit more charismatic, but for it to come off as genuine because people can sense that. And so for me, when I was going through transition readiness seminar, right, TRS, which it's like a week-long course for us to learn how to be civilians. Doesn't make sense that you're going to learn how to be a civilian in a week, but it's one of these programs that they put in place to do what they can to help us. And I remember when we were in TRS that they had us write resumes, which we did learn some good stuff from that, but there's still a lot of things that I think it was missing. But I mean, I'll cover that in a different episode. But what I want to focus on is the part where they taught us how to interview. So we wrote a small little like introduction of who we were, and then our partners in the group would ask us questions. The part where I think the system failed us, where that TRS class failed us, is I don't think it was setting realistic expectations. It was teaching us how to be robotic. We were writing down our answers on a piece of paper, and then if you were the interviewer and you were like, so what are your strong suits? What are you good at? What are you weak at? Typical questions going into an interview. People were reading them off the paper. You know what I mean? And it's to no fault of their own. But if you're going to practice something, you have to practice it correctly or you're just building bad habits. So for me, when I was going through that class and they were like, all right, go ahead and switch partners, I wouldn't even look at my script. I would literally like make stuff up on the go. I knew a key point that I wanted to talk about, like if it was my background about communication or if it was my background on electronics, like I knew I wanted to get that point across, but it didn't have to be the same every single time. So I think for those of you guys that may need to practice going through an interview or you may need to practice talking to people, that's perfectly fine. Like definitely practice with anyone and everyone that'll listen, but put the script down. Building relationships is about being genuine. It's not about reading something off a piece of paper because that's going to end up hurting you in the end. And really, that's what a job interview is. It's you starting a relationship. Yes, it's a little bit different. It's not like a personal relationship, but when you start looking at meeting new people, going to networking events, it's a relationship. So if you guys are listening, that's going to be my big piece of advice when it comes to being genuine is put the script down and just practice being genuine. When I walk into a room, I'm not going to lie and say like I'm the most confident person in the room all the time, but I will find things to boost my confidence in that room. So if I walk into a room, I'm walking into your room, Sulu, you're the hiring manager, and I see that you have a Pittsburgh Steeler flag up on your wall or a terrible towel, I know, okay, he knows football. So I'll try and break the ice before we start the interview. That's the key for you guys that are listening. Before you start the interview, you want to do something to set yourself apart from the rest of the candidates. A good majority of these candidates coming into these jobs are going to be structured. They're going to think that the person interviewing them is not human, that they can't make mistakes, that they can't laugh, that they can't crack a joke, and that's wrong. Now going to the fourth and final thing that I wanted to talk about today, and that's where I kind of had to stop you earlier because you were getting too into it. So I apologize for
Yeah.
stopping you, but hard work, man. I cannot say this enough. I think the only thing that separates people from greatness, people from rising in the ranks, from achieving something that they want, is hard work. And the reason I say that is because I don't know how many times I've seen when people get out of the military, they didn't start early enough. They didn't start searching for jobs until the day they got out or until a month that they got out. And that's the wrong thing to do because by that time, you're not competing with your peer group. And the advantage that they have because they're starting 6 to 9 months out is they still have a job. So, number one, they're going to be a lot more confident because if they fail, guess what? They can still go talk to another person, right?
Yeah.
So, again, it comes down to that confidence and that mindset. So, if you guys really want to make a difference in your future, you need to start as early as possible. Now, for you guys getting out of the military, my personal thing is you should start anywhere from 9 to 6 months out. Start reaching out to these people. Start reaching out to your network of friends, to their friends, to hiring agencies. The reason I say 6 to 9 months out is because a lot of these places may not be able to actually talk to you and bring you on board if you're anything further than that because there's certain laws that prohibit them from hiring from the military that far out. So you guys got to be careful with that. I mean, they're usually pretty good and they'll tell you from the get-go like, oh, hey, sorry, we can't talk to you because of this law, so come back to us in 3 months or 4 months. But if you guys are listening, hard work comes down to starting early. And another thing is, I don't think we cast enough nets. I don't think people talk to as many employers as they can, as many HRs as they can, as many hiring agencies, and that's terrible. What they told me was, look, Kevin, the worst thing someone can say is no. So I literally would like send out my resume to every single person in multiple industries. Obviously, when you're going to do that, you have to make sure you tailor your resume accordingly. And we can get into that subject at another time on a different episode. But cast as many nets as possible because it's going to help increase your odds of success. And the final thing, talking about hard work, is be relentless. A job search is a job in itself. It's not meant to be easy. It's not, hey, I sent out 5 resumes. Maybe in a month or two I'll send out another 5. That's not how it works. You gotta like I can't
Yep.
say that enough. You have to be persistent, and that's where I'm gonna hand the mic back over to Sulu because what he was talking about earlier when he was saying if he didn't hear back from a company within a reasonable amount of time, a week, 2 weeks, he would take it upon himself to call them, and he wouldn't go straight into, oh, hey, did I get the job? He would say, oh, hey, how are you doing? Like, I just wanted to touch bases. So we'll get his take on it, but please think about that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing a lot of people don't follow through. Like some of the resumes I put in, I'm like, man, I haven't heard back. So I had to call or I called the office. I was like, hey, or someone would be like, is this Sulu? Oh, yeah, and then they're like, yeah, this is me again. It's like, didn't you just call and talk to so and so the other day? I'm like, yeah. It gets a network with them, and then I'll crack jokes, and then like, okay, well, hey, you know what? We moved on to another candidate, but there's other job opportunities. I think will work well for. So let me pass it on to my manager, the hiring manager, and things happens like that many times. And if you just call simply a simple act like that, right? And I was like, yeah, sure, put me put me in for that position, sure. You got to work at it. You can't just give up. It's easy sometimes from my perspective, because I have a lot of buddies that came from the military, right? I think the initial is the shock because they don't know what to do. Some of them, they went in there very young, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my life now? Right? So I think
Yeah, for sure.
I think they go through the phase of, I don't know, and correct me, I feel some of them were failed, not being knowledgeable in some of the opportunities and programs that's given to them.
Right. And touching on your point of there being tons of resources out there for veterans, that's absolutely true. There's tons and tons of good opportunities and resources available to us. Unfortunately, to a certain degree, we do fail to get that information passed. And I can't really point my finger to any central person or any central organization that's failing us. All I know is what I can do right now. And what I can do is use my voice and my platform to help get some of this information out there. So for me, that's kind of like what I'm trying to do, is utilize my time and my network, share that with others. So for me, that's what it's really about. And going back real quick to following up, another thing that I have found that really sets me apart from the crowd is I'm very old school. If I send in a resume to a company, I'm not just going to send them a resume. I'm going to send them a resume that is printed on parchment paper, that is hand signed by me. It's not going to be folded. I'm going to personally walk it in myself. I'm also going to walk in a hand signed copy of a cover letter, because I think that me taking that little bit of extra effort is going to go a long way. They're going to see like, wow, he really wants this. He's willing to set himself apart and take this very seriously. And then too, with the follow-up, sending a thank you letter, even the jobs that I was passed over for, or they told me, hey, I'm sorry, but you just didn't meet our timing. The timing didn't work out. Try again later. I still send them a very genuine thank you, because that's leaving the door open, not just for me, but for friends of mine in the future. So going back to the follow-up, I send a thank you letter, or if it's an over the phone follow-up, I call and I just say like, hey, I'm super grateful for the opportunity. And usually when that happens, it's exactly like you said. It's like, man, this is a genuine person. You know what? Let me go out of my way to help him. And you'll find that a lot of people really want to help you if you come off as genuine. I've had that before where I called, I can't even remember what company, but again, it was in the aerospace industry. And I called this lady like a week or two after I had submitted my resume, and I didn't hear anything back. And I called, and I'm just like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know if you remember, but I actually spoke to you about a week and a half ago. I just haven't heard anything. I wanted to follow up. And she's like, oh, let me look you up in the system. So while she was looking me up in the system, we just started having a normal conversation. I think she saw like, oh, you're from this city in California. Like, I used to live there. And so we just started talking about that. We completely ignored the fact that we were talking about business and, me trying to get a job, and it turned into it turned into a personal conversation. And she was like, you know what? That position is closed, but we actually do have these other positions that we haven't announced yet. And that's what I want you guys to pick up on. Sometimes when you call, you're actually going to hear about better positions or positions that they never publish, because a lot of really good positions actually don't get published, and people don't know that. There's a lot of opportunity within the organization, but that's how it stays. They only tell their current employees like, hey, by the way, we're looking for this person with these qualifications, and we'll bump you from a level 2 to a level 3, or a level 3 to a level 4. But you go to their website and it's not published that they're looking for those positions. So you don't know to look for them. But when you call and you set yourself apart, you'll find that a lot of these opportunities are there. So it's cool to just realize like, oh man, we made a connection. She's going out of her way to help me. That happened because of how I treated another person. So it really just comes down to you guys putting in the time, building these relationships, casting as many nets as possible, using your network to the fullest of your advantage. And then most importantly, once you make it, once you're successful, make sure you pass that on to the next guys behind you, because you have to continue that trend. We have to continue to uplift and help our community if we want to succeed. I'm only at where I'm at now because of my old gunnery sergeant who looked out for me, and so on and so forth. Now I'm doing my part to try and pay back others. So I hope that people listening to today's episode really took some good things away from hearing your story, Tim, because it's awesome to hear that, number one, you're changing the stigma or the mindset of, hey, he's a Samoan dude, but he doesn't have to work as a bouncer just because he's a big dude. He's intelligent. He can do anything he wants to. And that's really what I want people to realize is, don't let other people or even fear incapacitate you or dictate your future. You're in control of your future. Make sure you talk to as many people as you can. Make sure you change your mindset. Don't allow your mind to defeat you before you even start. Make sure you have a sense of direction. You're working hard towards that goal, and you're being genuine. Because I think with those 4 things right there that we discussed and given some examples of each, I think if you guys put some of those things into practice, you're going to see that it makes a big difference. If you guys do put these into practice. If you guys have more specific questions, or if you have a resume that you want us to look over, like, I'll personally stay up as long as it takes, even if you're not coming from aviation. Maybe you're coming from like infantry or different sector of the military. I will do everything in my power to help you be successful. So please, if you guys have questions, if you need guidance, I'm so serious. Go ahead and shoot me an email at kbarba, that's BARBA, at theunwavering.com. And I promise you, I will get back to you. I will do what I can to share my resources and my network with you, because I want you to be successful. I absolutely mean that. Before we go ahead and end this, Tim, is there one piece of advice or something that you think really makes a difference in people getting hired or reaching their full potential when it comes to their professional lives?
Don't give up. Believe in yourself and keep trying. You don't know if it'll work unless you try.
Definitely. Well, unfortunately, guys, that's all the time that we have for today's episode. I hope that our personal examples, you guys hearing inspirational stories of people like my Samoan brother Sulu right here, I hope it inspires you guys to realize you don't have to conform. He went from working any job he can get his hands on. He then went into law enforcement. He then got his foot in the door in the aerospace industry as security. And then he went into making sure that he was actually keeping flight hardware and different projects safe. And it's just another example of someone who didn't have to have all the checks in the box, but because they were able to follow those 4 things that we said, the mindset, the direction, the hard work, and being genuine, he was able to be at the level that he's at now. And I know it's just the beginning for him. So thank you guys for tuning in. Tim, huge thank you to you for coming on, especially so last minute. I know we just went to go eat, and then you came on board to do this.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The Unwavering. Please rate and comment on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star and a great comment, and we may just read it on a future episode. Also, follow us on social platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to check back with us next week.